it's the last Monday of March. And we're meeting on a special off schedule because Easter is coming. um, so here we are, uh, uh, in our last Monday of March. Um, I have one or two things that I want to chat about. I want to ask Tim. I want to ask you about your work on Boreal Basic and the 0th Monday of April. um, I want to ask you about that. I know I talked to Stewart earlier this evening. He said he was going to join us and he wanted to chat a little bit about VCF. So we could do a little bit of planning for VCF, planning chat for VCF. Um, Ingo and Carl are not here yet. And Ingo had both actually Ingo and there's Ingo. Both Ingo and Carl had told us a little bit about what this project that they're working on, to make I don't know, a super 1000 basically. But I'll let Ingo talk about it now that he's here. And there's Stuart. Cool. All right. So, uh, Tim, if you don't mind, I'm gonna harass you real quickly.
Well, I really don't have
Um,
much to report. So the last step so everything should be working with ZX Basic. The last thing was the load and save because those in the EX-ROM, it's a little different to how do you get those. So I was working with our man in Argentina
mhm.
and kind of waiting for him to, because that's really kind of beyond my ability. He was going to look into that and see how best to do it. So there really hasn't been any progress on that in a while.
Okay.
So you also asked on about the motherboard stuff, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. How's that going?
Well, I got a few. So this is a two-prong effort. It was basically I wanted to kind of like catalog all the different types of ZX81s, 1000s. I know that there's a bunch in the UK, but I'm like, well, I don't even try and go down that road. Way too many people doing that. Let's just focus on the USA ZX81s and the 1000s. And I've only got about 5 data points. Actually, about two ZX81 data points and three 1000 data points. And basically, it looks like the ULA and the ROM version for the ZX81 USA are the same one, and the same for the 1000. But a couple data points isn't really enough. I
Yeah.
want to have a lot more to see. Maybe there's some that have different ULAs or different ROM versions. If you ever crack open your ZX81 1000, you will see the ULA version printed on the chip. It'll be something like 2C184E or 2C10E.
Yeah.
Oh, I should
There's one other number, right?
so I think there's like 3 or 4 ULAs. And then if you look at the ROM, there's going to be a 650, the first one, a 622, and a 649. ZX81s and the USA ones are 622 and 649 for 1000. As I was looking at digging into more, I also went down a different rabbit hole of serial numbers
Yeah.
because the 1000s coming out of Portugal had serial numbers. So I started doing some looking online, and I've always thought that everything, all the 1000s are made in Portugal. End of story. Nothing else. Then it turns out in one of my Google searches that the Computer History Museum here local has the 1000 in the collection, and it has a serial number starting with F, meaning made in France.
Right. Yeah.
I was like, what? So I'm like, where else can I get more information about 1000s without bugging people? Oh, eBay. Because everyone takes a picture of the one they're on sale. They always take a picture of the back. So I trolled through every single 1000 I could find on eBay and came up with a bunch of serial numbers. I put them in a spreadsheet. I think I have like 29.
Oh, nice.
So I found nine. that were built in France, a bunch built in Portugal, and I actually found 1,000 says made in the UK. So I'm
Okay.
assuming the UK one is made in Dundee.
Yeah.
For France, Timex had a facility in starts with the B, like Bascon or something. It's over in eastern France, close to Switzerland. So I'm assuming that's the only Timex facility they really had there. So that's probably where the ones in France were made. I did also find a memory module made in France also. So interesting enough, early serial numbers just had a serial number and then a bunch of, F or P dash and then a number. Later, they actually started having two letters at the end. And then they also started having model numbers. And for the 1000, it's a model, either model 330 or model M330.
Hmm.
So, like the ones in France, every of them had model number 330. I believe the 335 or 34 was the extra memory, slightly different. But the France ones were ending a .io, a .jo. Portuguese end in .rt, qt, rp, sp, so, ho. I'm not sure exactly what those mean, but the serial number itself, the number does just increase. I don't know where it starts, but I think for Portugal, I see ones in the looks like 2 million. No, 200,000, 211,450, and then go up to ending in 744474427. Yeah. So they go up. So I don't know exactly how many were made, but if you can't, only you can tell based on the serial number how many it made if they were sequential or not.
Right.
But I do have the screenshots of the ones made, in France and the ones made in the UK. Totally new to me. Hadn't heard about that before. Granted, I've only owned two, one of each. But no one's ever talked about that. No one's ever said, "Oh, hey, mine's made here." No. It just was never discussed in the community. It was a total surprise for me. I don't know if it's a surprise for you guys at all.
Well, I think I have. Yes, I do. I do know this. I have one that has an F, a France serial number. Pretty sure I've got at least one Portugal, and then I have no idea what the rest of them are. But I do remember coming across the the France one once, and that was really cool.
I also looked at the things on the motherboard, such as what was the issue of the motherboard, and ZX81s were all issue one,
Okay.
and 1000s were all issue three. Um, but if people can go out and do a little more looking into that, again, I've only got two ZX81's data points and three 1000s. So if people have ever chance to crack or have one old one open up, crack open one, I just need to know basically what's the issue in the motherboard, if there's a label on the motherboard, what the ULA is, what the ROM is, how many chips. I've seen an image of a ZX81 with 5 chips instead of 4.
Two RAM
Uh,
chips.
I think it might be RAM.
Okay.
Um, and then the color of the back. I think most everyone we've got the backing. Well, when you would call it
Solder
the
mask.
okay cover mask is red for both the USA ZX81 and the 1000. I only think early ZX81s were green.
Green,
Now
yeah.
remember, my ZX81, I got it early on. I mean, I bought it as soon as it came out. So it was already it was issue one, but it was the back color was red.
Okay.
So
Okay.
and it did have the 622, which is the 650 ROM had the math problem. So they fixed that and created the 622, and then the final ROM was the 649, which all the 1000 should have.
Okay.
Haven't looked into anything with the 1500. I think the 1000, 1500, and the 2068 were such a short run. There probably wasn't many changes. They probably did one run, a bunch, and just never changed anything. Especially the 2068, given how long it was on the market. So
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Um, I've
I
seen
know.
references to these ROM numbers on Sinclair CX World, and it never really, realized that there were so many different ROMs for the 81 and the one, mostly the 81, right? Is what you're finding, Sam?
Right. So, um, and if you look at it, it really is printed on the chip. I always thought, like, well, how do you determine what
Yeah.
the ROM is? And thing? Luckily, it's just printed on the chip.
Oh my gosh.
Same thing with the ULA, just printed on the chip what the ULA is. I think
Okay.
there's like four or five ULA versions. There's quite a few. Only three ROM versions of the ROM. Then, of course, there's some later ROMs like the Shoulder Giants and whatever, but those are all more software based than came from Sinclair. So,
Right. Right.
but for me, the biggest thing was the fact that I didn't realize they made them in France and didn't realize the 1000s were made in the UK because 1000s were only for I think the 1000s are only for the North American market because they were NTSC, so they made it in the US and they probably went to Canada. I don't know where else they might have gone initially. So whether they got, whether like the 26, I believe, what got Argentina because they got dumped, but I don't know where the original Mark 1000s was just US and Canada. I'm assuming they're sold in Canada directly. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't want to send you down another rabbit hole too much. But one of the things that I noticed, I think it was about the RAM packs. So you know how there's that FCC box on the back of the RAM pack, and it's got um, the statement about it, being a
Yeah.
Class B computing device. There's at least two variations of that, and they have a different. I don't remember what it is at the top of the FCC box. I think it's a different model number, a slightly different model number, and
But there's a long number, like an FCC ID number.
that's it. The FCC ID number is different on the 1016 pack, and since there are different um, places of manufacture for the 1000, I'm wondering if that FCC label on the bottom of the 1000 is consistent across all of them as
I
well.
can look into that. I also remembered that. So someone made a comment online that if you saw the bottom of the motherboard and it had that piece of metal that goes across, oh,
Yeah.
it's got to be 1000.
Mm-mm.
But my ZX81 has one.
Mhm.
So I think that was just made for the American market.
Yeah.
That if it had that extra thing, plus the interior inside of the case was
Silvered.
they sprayed some metal paint to make help with the grounding and so on. So I think that extra bar was just anything that came into the U.S. Anything that was FCC approved,
Yeah, yeah. That makes
not
perfect
just for
sense.
the
Hey
1000.
Tim,
Yep.
I also have a US ZX81, which I found, by the way, Carl.
Yeah.
Uh, there was a post recently about how small these were, so I fell victim to that. It was still in my bag from when we met last, and it's black. You can't. It's dark in the bag. Anyway, um, mine just. I haven't opened it again to look at the back of the board, but mine says made in England. Or
Yes,
no,
all the
this says
ZX81s
Okay.
did say made in England.
or this says UK, I think, right there. But that's in the mold. And then
Yeah, that's the
FCC.
difference. That's a difference too for all the UK stuff is that has the Sinclair, all that stuff molded into the plastic, right? The
Yeah, it does.
1000 case, that's not there.
It's just flat.
And I've
Even
got
though
a. Oh,
so
sorry.
he has the one with the molding and the FCC license.
Well, it just says FCC identification data, model number ZX81 USA. It doesn't have any. Oh yeah, it does say here. The printed part says made in England. The molded part says made in UK.
UK.
I think they
And then
made just enough. You also notice that the video output is, I think, further back because they'd use a different
yeah,
uh,
the US
Modulator.
one
modulator,
comes out here.
right? Because they had to use a different modulator for NTSC versus the PAL. So,
But that was built into the mold for the both of those.
Ryan,
You
I
can-
saw yours as a whole. What's it? Is that?
You can see the outline for the UK one. Then that's where I drilled the hole for my composite mod.
Got it. Okay.
And that's the other thing too with the molds. I've seen something recently that somebody was showing that, but the earlier ones you could actually see the mold, right, where they filled it in and they injection molded it that way. And then the later ones, like most of the 1000s, if you look at that 1000s, they were supposed to be made only with the NTSC, so there is no filled in mold there.
Mold
They
box,
totally
yeah.
must have made a new mold where that was totally, not even cut out. But so there's cases where
Yeah,
you
they
can
did
see,
because it has the indent for the logo, right?
Yeah.
right.
That's
So
right.
it does have a different case, but I don't know if there's 1000 cases that have, you can see where they filled in the other mold, but I know there's somebody was showing where you can see that on the cases where, yes, they do have the fill in mold, and there's other cases where it's not, right? So it's kind of all these
Yeah.
little tidbits.
Well, I mean, if people want to go and look at their hardware, and then if you find 1000 with that extra mold option versus 1000 that doesn't have it, let it, reply in the chat, or not chat, but reply in the email list, and we can get that all documented, and we hopefully look more into what, if there's any more about the ULA version and the ROM version, and just I want to get more of just more than 5, kind of get like maybe 20 or 30 a database.
Yeah.
So
My other question was the ROM version. You say that's on the chip?
yep, it's going to be 650, 622, or 649.
Well, I have one opened here. This is the Italian one, or the Spain one.
Spain one. Yeah.
And this has got a Motorola chip on it. And it just says ZCM38818T 8312. So
Interesting.
I don't think it has the ROM version on here.
That's a ZX81 or
Nope, this is the 1000.
the 1000. Okay.
Like I said,
But that, even though
it actually says Timex Sinclair 1000.
Oh.
interesting. So, because I think on some of the ones I saw, the 1000, they actually still said ZX81 issue 3 on the motherboard.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the only one that I've seen that actually says Timex Sinclair TS 1000. It's still 1981 copyright issue 3 or ISS 3. So yeah, it's an issue 3 board, but it's got the
It has
green
1000 on
solder
it.
mask.
Well,
Yeah, and it says
there's another data point to document.
yeah,
I'm
it says
assuming
Timex.
did
Go
the
ahead.
case they made in Portugal?
I have to see the case that this came in. I just have the board. The cases
Okay.
in the other room, but because usually when I take them apart, I don't mess with the cases. I just leave the case.
You like the Barbies? You separate the Barbie from the clothes?
Yeah, something like
Separate
that.
the case from the motherboard?
Because usually I work on the board. I don't really do too much to the case unless I start getting my spray paint cans out.
Well, if you can just check to make sure it doesn't say "Made in Spain" on some of those cases, that'd be great.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Oh my gosh.
That would be unique if it did say. But I'm probably going to say "Made in Portugal." They just happen to subcontract the motherboard to Spain. So
Yeah, yeah.
You said
That's
there's
what
more. There's more than 3 ULA. I thought there's only 3 ULAs that they had.
I thought there could be 3. I thought it was more than that. But the primary ones is the 184E and the 210E.
Yeah.
So
And then there
I
was
think
an
it might be
earlier one for the early ones. I think it was a 153 or 158 or 150
remember.
something. There's
Okay.
a 150 something ULA, which is in the early ones.
cool.
Uh-oh,
So
Stewart's.
you're adding this to your database.
It's not focusing.
Hang on, Stuart.
Yeah.
Let me get. Can you hear
Okay,
me?
go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Stuart. I just want to spotlight you.
It's not focusing on the camera, but somewhere I have shells for ZX81s that got shipped to the factory from the molding company. And those bags from the molding companies is called NFI, Nameplates for Industry, is the name of the people who actually molded the plastic shells. And they exist. There is a company today named platesforindustry.com. Of course, they're not, particularly advertising ZX81 cases anymore. But anyway, just a piece of trivia. Somewhere I actually have, in my binder, I have their, the logo that was on the bag. But somewhere I actually have the bags. I'll get a picture of it. And
Yeah.
so how many different people, had injection molds and made them? I have no idea.
Oh, that's crazy. Yeah, Stuart, you should take a picture and send that to the list.
Yeah, I'll
That'd be really
send you.
interesting.
One of the interesting things about it is I have shells for the European ones, and the shells I have the shells that were for the Model 2-3 VHF, units, the ones that were spray painted. When they spray painted them, the hole for the switch, the channel 2-3 switch,
Yeah.
was not poked through. In other words, there was a solid piece of plastic filling that hole, so that when they sprayed paint, the paint didn't go to the other side, to the top side of the shell. They knocked that out after they spray painted, because I have some with that hole filled in, before it got to the factory, and they knocked the hole for the channel 2-3 switch out.
Oh, that's crazy. That's crazy.
I'll take some pictures and send them some of them.
Yeah, because I imagine the UK ZX81s, they don't even have that hole there, because they don't have a switch.
Right.
Right.
Even though it's on the board, even the issue 1 boards have place for the switch, but only that's only used for the US models.
Stuart, since we have you, let's jump into VCF Midwest chat.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, what do we know? What's the venue like? I signed up I called David earlier this evening to find out the scoop. So I did join the mailing list, the emails, so I'll be getting their mailings.
Good. Yeah, the venue's attached to this hotel in Schaumburg, Illinois, which is somewhere outside of Chicago. Unfortunately, we don't have Mowgli with us, who would, could tell us all sorts of details about it. And the only message that they sent out on the list for this year, aside from, yes, we're having it, is, the hotel is opened up, and, you can make reservations. A couple weeks ago, maybe it was more than a couple weeks ago, when I tried to make a reservation for 4 nights, it wasn't possible. Ingo told me the other day that the rooms were some were still available, but they were going pretty quickly. Isn't that right, Ingo?
Yeah, when I talked to their Julie and group reservations or whatever title was.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I tried to do it online and it wouldn't let me book through the VCF page. So I waited till the next morning and called them and spoke to somebody. I went ahead and just booked rooms outside of that and said, "Hey, here's my confirmation number. If you can change it." And there was quite a discount with the group rate.
Oh, good.
But they just don't guarantee a room type, right? So if you book a room with a king bed, you might get a king bed, you might get 2 doubles. But at that point, I mean, you just want a room, right? You want a bed, you want a shower, a sandbox, and life is good. Because you shouldn't be spending much time in your room anyway, right? You should be looking at retro computers and hanging out at the bar and getting in trouble.
Well, okay. So speaking of which, how many of y'all are familiar with something called Malort? I'm not hearing any yeses. Okay, cool. So Malort is this beverage that is associated with a bar in Chicago, and so it's sort of a Chicago thing, apparently. And it is it's unique. and it's a unique beverage that we will enjoy together. And my wife hopefully will be around to take pictures of your faces when you drink it. Let me just put it that way.
Well, I checked
Yeah,
the
well,
tourist
Dave.
page trying to figure out, should I just come for 2 days or should I make it 3 or, and they say food wise, deep dish pizza is their thing.
Yep, that's true. Yep.
Chicago's known for.
Yep.
I don't know what
Yeah,
else.
the deep dish pizza. David, what was that drink again?
Malort.
Never heard of it. And I grew up in Chicago.
Yeah, that's okay. In your free time, just Google the phrase Malort face. There's a whole Flickr group for it. There's videos. One or two folks have made some reviews of it on YouTube. If you guys remember the Macintosh commercials where there were the two guys, one was the Mac guy and the other guy was PC, and the PC guy was played by John Hodgman, the comedian. John Hodgman is at least at one point was known for filling a snifter with Malort and drinking it while he's on stage, and then passing it around the audience and it coming back still pretty full. So it's what they call a unique botanical. I've tortured people with it for a long time. And since it's from Chicago, we're all gonna experience it. Anyway, actually, and before we started the meeting, Joe and David and I were talking about, what we're going to bring, and I'm starting to build my pile in my basement of the things that I'm going to bring because I'm driving out, right? And I'll have plenty of room, theoretically. I'll have plenty of room in my car. So I'm going to put a list of stuff that I'm bringing on a spreadsheet, and we can share it and see what kind of holes we have. Oh, yeah, and the other thing is, when Stewart called, we talked earlier, I told him that I've not received a message from VCF saying that tables are available, but that the minute I do receive a message saying that tables are available, we're going to have a little emergency Zoom meeting so we can figure out how many tables we need.
Okay, I was going to ask too.
Yeah,
so they
absolutely.
haven't. So nobody's been able to book tables yet. That's kind of interesting.
They have not, sent out the message that says.
And I know Mowgli said last time that they booked them really late, right?
He did,
and
yeah.
So hopefully this time they'll get their act together a little bit better and get that earlier.
Book them sooner. Yeah, absolutely. That's what I'm hoping. So, but as soon as I hear, I'm gonna send a message out to y'all, and we'll just hop on Zoom for half an hour or whatever, and figure out how many tables, just how much linear foot space we need. I know that Randy has said that he's not going to be near us. He's going to go over by the Atari people. And you're welcome not to, if you don't want to hang out with the Timex folks, you want to go have your table somewhere else in the room, that's fine too. Also, Mowgli said at one of our meetings that even if we can't initially get a bunch of tables together, that we can probably work with the organizers to get whatever tables that we do end up getting placed near each other. So we can have a Timex corner or something like that.
Yeah, I think in the spreadsheet you mentioned about a table, because I know I want to get a table. So right. I mean, that, but I don't know who else wants to get a table. I'm sure you're going to get a table or two, David, or I think you said you were going to get two.
I'm going to get at least two, just because to have room for whomever.
Right.
Yeah, I'd probably get a table, and I'd put a kit spread out. People can see all the components,
Yeah,
and then bring one of the items that I sell. Like if people are, even though I advertise things as new, when they get them and they're new, people are surprised they're new somehow. oh, these books really are brand new. You know, they're from 1983, but they were in boxes. So I'll probably bring just one of each book. You know, and I still have half a dozen titles left or something, and you know, just an assortment of stuff. And definitely the new, I'd have a ZX printer hooked up to an Arduino or a Raspberry Pi or something with that adapter that Tim made. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's you know, half the thing is showing off all the cool stuff. Cool. All right. Ingo, Joe. Hey, Peyton, are you coming to hang out? Were you planning on like showing off anything?
I was just kind of whatever. I don't know that I'm knowledgeable enough to have my own table and speak to the computers, but yeah, I just kind of figured I'd come along and if anybody needs help working a table or showing stuff off.
Okay. Okay. Cool. All right. So make sure we accounted for you in some way.
Yes.
And Ingo and Carl, you both spoke up. I'm trying to think who else. David, we know what you're doing, and Joe, we know what you're doing. Jeff, Kay, are you?
I'm gonna be there, but I probably won't have anything because I'll be flying up for the weekend.
Okay.
And I'm still working on my little projects, but nothing's real. I mean, I won't have anything ready probably, so I'll just be there to participate.
Well, I mean, so this is actually probably a good thing is if you have something ready, and maybe you don't necessarily need to bring bring stuff. Maybe you just need to bring whatever it is, whether it's a tape or something, right? And or you can send a file, and I'll have a machine that has a USB attached to it, so we could use that, right? So even if you don't have hardware to bring, if you have a program you want to demo or something, that's part of the coordination thing that we need to think about is how can we show off everybody's projects without requiring everybody to bring a monitor.
I have a machine with a USB in it too, Dave.
Oh, sweet. Okay. Nice.
As well as a 1500. I don't know how many people have those, but I do have a 1500.
Okay, cool. Yeah. I don't have a 1500 anymore. So yeah, I mean we should right, again, the coordination, David. We should we can make sure we have one of everything, as it were.
I'll bring one of those Timex carry cases with a 1500 in it.
So I had the carry case, but the guy who had it before me was a smoker.
Oh.
And it smelled so bad, I had to throw it away. I couldn't deal with it.
You should have been able to wash it. It's completely plastic. I mean, wow.
No, the inside had like a fake. Maybe it wasn't the same case. It reminded me of the old briefcase we used to have.
Yeah, big plastic briefcasey looking thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, the ones I had those in college. You could check them out of the library and work on them, and they had like a paper.
Like a paper on the inside.
Yeah,
yeah. And it smelled awful. It was just awful. And I used to smoke, and it was so bad I couldn't stand it.
Where was the paper inside of it, guys?
It's like just glued on the inside of the plastic.
Wait,
Joe.
Oh, are you guys talking about the training kit that was put together by?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
yeah, because
it had all the books and the tapes in it, and
tape
drive, and
Stewart's. Let me just share my screen, because what Stewart's talking about, and so when you said you threw it away, I was like, oh my god. Stewart's talking about this thing, the 1050 carrying case.
Oh no, that's not what it looked like.
Yeah, and this thing, where was the right, here we go. Here's the why is this picture not coming? Oh, okay, I'll worry about that later. According to the little flyer that Timex put out for this thing, they only made 2,000 of those things. These little plastic briefcases, and they're
That's definitely not what I had.
yeah. Okay. All right.
Yeah, you're talking about the training one where that was actually a briefcase. It was
Yeah.
like,
It was
yeah,
like the plastic
It's like this
briefcase we
one.
got when I was in basic training in the
And
Air
that
Exactly.
was,
Yes.
that was
Okay,
yeah.
it's like this one.
Oh yeah, Mike, let me spotlight you.
Yeah.
I'm gonna
yeah,
stop sharing.
that's it. Yeah, I have the same thing too, but
Yes, that's the one I had.
Oh wow. That's nice. That's nice, Mike. Very cool.
yeah, I got mine in the other room too. But anyway, yeah, it's a briefcase,
Okay.
and it does have some I don't know, not plastic. It's something in there
Like a
where
little
everything's
flappy
cut
shape.
out. Yeah, it's got cutouts in the bottom, so everything fits in there nicely, and then the
Yep.
top part has a flap where all the manuals went into.
Okay. Okay.
But the one that Stuart's talking about, yeah, that's just a blow molded plastic case thing, so there's no, there's nothing that would retain smoking.
Oh, you.
Well, I mean, plastic will, anything will get it, but I mean, you might be able to, like you said, throw it in the dishwasher or something like that and give it a wash.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Hey, Carl, since you have an interesting background, talk to us about what we're looking at behind you.
Well, Ingo kind of hit me up about, my, that basically the 1550 or whatever the expansion project that we were, that I was going to do, that I was asking for input on from everybody.
Yeah.
And so, he was intrigued with that, but he, obviously wanted to something so he could integrate with his, his Kilo Z case, right? So he was like, what if we made a new motherboard that had all this, stuff that you're kind of wanting to put onto this external card, already built in.
Yeah.
So I was like, yeah, I mean, I hadn't thought about that because obviously I was thinking more of an external thing that you would plug into an unmodified, ZX81 or 1000. And so I was like, well, I don't see why, we couldn't look into that. And kind of what's behind me is like an early rendition of a board that I made that basically does that, right? So he's, you can see in the upper left up there. What's that?
Well, I think that was just somebody's mic.
Okay.
Yeah.
You can see in the upper left up there, that's kind of the Westby.
Okay.
So it's not on the developer board. That's just the ESP32 module itself, right? And it has an external antenna.
Yep.
Because on the 1000 cases, obviously, as we talked about earlier, they have a metallic, interior, right, for the FCC approval, right? Which the British ones, the ZX81s, they don't. Right, it's just black inside. There's no shielding inside the UK ones. So this would obviously, I mean, the developer board one, or I mean, there's the other module that has the PCB antenna, right, as part of the PCB.
Yeah.
That probably would work. In the Kilo Z case, it works because obviously the Kilo Z case doesn't have any kind of shielding, built into that. So it works on there. But I was thinking if people are going to put this, another thing that Ingo wanted was to maintain the form factor, right? The size of the original board that's in the TS1000 so that you could put this in to a 1000 case. Of course, you can see on the top, there's a couple of big sub D connectors, D sub connectors, and there's no connections on the left edge, right? Which there are on the real board.
Right. No ear connector and stuff like that.
Right. So no ear, no mic, no power, no RF output. So this, all the connectors are going to be at the back. So I guess if you did put it in a 1000 case, you'd have to mod it, right, to allow those connectors to poke out. But the connector on the left is the main one. It has VGA. It's a 9-pin. It's not a 15-pin. It's only a 9-pin. but it has the VGA output. It has a composite video output. It has, I don't know, the Wespy design that I saw this guy make, the Wespy Nano, it actually has an audio output from the Wespy for some reason. I
Okay.
don't know what that does, but so I integrated that into that connector. So there's an audio output, and I integrated the power. So 9 volts actually comes in through that connector as well. So we're gonna have to make some dongles up. But that kind of consolidates all the connections into one connector there. That's kind of nice. So it'll have BGA out, it'll have composite out. And of course it will have the Wespy capability, which people that don't know what that is basically a Wi-Fi enabled file server, so to speak. I guess at the Wespy, you just do a load quote, and the Wespy kind of intercepts that and says, "Oh, you're doing a load quote," so it kind of loads its own loader, right, and then runs the software, and then you get a like a not a GUI, but you get an interface where it shows you what's kind of stored in its memory in the Wespy's RAM.
Yeah.
Which you can store P files in there, and you can load P files, and it has a fast loader. So like Ingo was showing me that he had a program that's like 14K, right? Which that'd be a huge basic a huge
Yeah, it's
program
like 5
on
minutes
tape.
worth of load time.
Right, exactly. And he loaded it, and it took it's not instant like the cartridge things that I'm doing, but it wasn't that long. It couldn't have been more than 10 seconds tops, right, for it to load a big program like that. So it is a very fast loading thing, and it's kind of making me think about maybe not even making cartridge support available for this thing, because if you have that, why bother with a cartridge? It's like I said, it's not instant, but it's still pretty dang fast to load up programs. Plus you can store as many programs in that the RAM, I guess that I think it's a 4 megabyte module or something like that, but I think maybe only 1 meg's available
It's still
with
a lot
the
of memory.
software. Yeah. So you could still, 1 megabyte. How big's the biggest 16K program? Maybe, like I said, 16K at top, at the most. And so you're right. That's a lot. So anyway, the other thing is, I gotta go this way.
Oh, thank you.
I took the battery holder off. That's not there in this design. That may be coming later, because I wanted to make the RAM battery backed.
Oh.
So that you could load stuff into the RAM on the machine, and you can unplug it, and it would stay there, right? So you wouldn't have to reload it every time. What else?
You got an LED on a stalk over there on the left.
Yeah, I don't know what the 3D model of that showed like that, but it's just going to be an LED on the board.
Okay.
That's for the Wespy activity, right? So on the developer board, that would be the blue LED. So that's kind of mimicking that, so you can see if the Wespy is doing something.
So which of these 40? So the 40 pin space that we can see that has the. So what is that? What is that?
So this is an earlier design. So, but basically, yeah, that's the ULA socket. That's for the ULA. And
what's the thing that goes under the ULA?
Well, I changed that over to, it's all under the CPU now. But anyway, so because the ULA gets kind of hot, right? So I was like, well, let's not put anything under it, right? Yeah. We'll just leave it blank. So I kind of moved all that under the CPU on the design that we're building, right? It's actually being made right now. But anyway, that is the M1 NOT circuit.
Oh.
I kind of put it there in the initial design because that's really where it goes to. It goes to the ULA. It intercepts A14 and A15, right, and kind of can make the ULA do video or not. That's kind of how the M1 NOT circuit works. So that's what's kind of in the valley there. So I'm kind of trying to get some real consolidate real estate here.
Is that like a PAL or something, or gal?
No, it's just I don't know why the 3D model on that also has that, but it's just a 7400. It's a quad NAND gate, quad 2 input NAND gate chip.
Okay,
that's all that is.
Okay.
Then there's a resistor packs. We got the resistor packs, and kind of still There's the Z80 right under me.
Okay, right behind you.
That's where the Z80 chip is, right? And it's got a resistor pack there. Then kind of more to the right of that is the ROM. It's
Oh
kind of
yeah, I can see.
mimicking an issue 3 board, so to speak, right? That's where the ROM goes.
Yeah.
And then on the far right, that's where the RAM goes, and that's a big monster RAM chip. That's a 512K by 8.
Oh wow.
So we've got a lot of expansion capabilities. We're thinking about some bank switching. We have to come up with some logic for that, but that'll all be done, basic through IO ports, similar to what the Timex, the 2068 does.
Yeah.
So we'll have some flexibility there as to how we want to make bank switching happen. It may just be something as simple as you have, you could have 8 full machines, right, in there. So you could maybe load up, a program that you like, that you use quite a bit, and you can bank switch to that image, and then you'll just put the power to it, and it'll already have it there, right? You don't have to load anything.
Yeah.
But we're also thinking of maybe we could put some cartridge images on there, and stuff like that. It's just it's really flexible at this point. But I've just wired it up right now to use the 64K, the one bank.
And then the looks like about 20 pin ICs, the three device chips.
Okay, so those, yeah, the chips above the RAM or the ROM is that's the joystick. That's the joystick logic.
Okay.
So some guy, I guess it's from a article way back in the 80s that somebody made this with discrete logic chips, and so this guy consolidated all that into 2 gals.
Oh
So
wow.
there's 2 gal chips there, and then there's a RAM chip, a 2K by 8 RAM chip. And his original design used a like a 6116 Hitachi, it's a
Yeah, an old static RAM.
right. It's an old SRAM chip, but it's a 600 mil package, right? It's the wide dip package.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, well, I don't really have room for that. So is there a slim dip 2K by 8 chip that they made? And yes, they did, but it's kind of harder to get. So, but anyway, I decided to use that footprint just so we could, it would all fit on here. And so it also has joystick capability, right? That's the second port, kind of right there next to the edge expansion connector. That's for the joystick.
So how does
And
the RAM figure into the joystick interface?
well, the RAM is just for the joystick interface, and so he has a little machine code program, and then when you so that's something that could be stored in the battery backed RAM, so that's always there, right? Otherwise, you have to kind of load it
Okay.
all the time, which not a big deal with the recipe is integrated with this, but anyway, it's just a little machine code program, and then so you basically, I think you do like a let A equals quote, and then your key mapping unquote,
Oh wow.
right?
Okay.
And then you do a randomized user this machine code program, and the machine code program looks at your let statement or whatever,
Yeah.
and redefines the joystick keys to match whatever you want them to be,
That's ingenious.
right? So it's just 2 lines, right? You have to run it before your program. Well, because that's what the RAM's for. So it's configuring the RAM in the joystick portion to, assign the keys. So it'll
Yeah.
look at those keys, and then you load your program, right? And then if it has joystick support and you can't redefine your keys in the game, which a lot of them are like that, then you
Yeah.
can redefine them first, run the program, and then you have joystick support for a program that doesn't even have joystick support, right? It's just using the keyboard, but now you can make it so that the joystick mimics the keys on the keyboard.
Yeah. Interesting. I've seen a sort of similar technique using EPROMs where somebody would program a pattern into the EPROM, and based on data coming in one way, pins would change in some respect or another.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, I've seen some designs, and I was like, seems to me to be the most eloquent, the simplest, electronically, logically wise.
Yeah.
it only takes 3 chips, right? And a a resistor pack pull up, but and like I said, it's kind of nice with this design because it's all integrated, right? It's not on an external board, which is what it was originally designed to be, as an external plug-in card.
And so where does Ingo's keyboard plug in? Is it down front somewhere?
Yeah, it doesn't show. Yeah, like I said, it's a very early design. So the keyboard connectors would be down in the where they normally would be on the board, under the
Off to your
RAM
left.
chips down there. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And
Actually,
so,
Carl, I have the image that you posted to
Oh,
our
okay.
groups.io
yeah,
that
yeah,
I can share that shows kind of the more modern version.
yeah. There you go. I probably have it somewhere. I was just kind of trying to set my background, and I don't know where
Yeah,
I
or
stored it.
or if David wants, well, here,
Yeah, go ahead, Ingo.
you want me to pull that one out?
Yeah, because I got sharing turned on.
Carl, a possible solution to let you not have to modify the case.
Yeah, you could, because if you just wired up to where those sockets go, right?
Yeah, well,
You
what
could run it out
this-
one of the other holes.
Yeah, what I'm saying is like if you go on AliExpress, they sell those little D9 connectors
Mm-hmm.
with a ribbon on them for pennies, like $1 or something. You get the DB9 on one end and a connector on the other. And if you fold that flexible ribbon cable, it'll go out. You can sneak it out of a hole on the side of your case, like an
Okay.
ear mic or 9-volt DC jack. I did that. I made a USB keyboard that way. All it's got is a little Arduino in there, like a Nano.
Yeah.
And then a regular Timex keyboard. And when I wanted to add a joystick, that's what I did. I used that little cable coming out so they didn't have to mod the case.
Mm-hmm. I was thinking the same thing, Stuart.
Yeah.
Great minds.
So
Yeah.
Carl, almost everything here is through hole except for the ESP32, which is, obviously not a through hole part.
Right, and there's a voltage regulator and a transistor on the back side, which I think I showed the back side too, but anyway, those are surface mount as well. So, very, very minimal surface mount stuff.
Cool. Okay. So the reason I was asking was because you've got that transistor down there that goes under the Z80.
Right, you have to fold that flat.
Fold it down.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
At least I hope so. I don't see I don't see why that won't fold down, but we'll, and I had to actually go to I was trying to stay at 6 layers.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
I probably could do 6 layers, but I'd have to do, I had to spend some time hand routing. It won't auto route. So I went to 8 layers and it still didn't auto route. It did like 95% of it. So I still had to do some hand routing even with 8 layers. But I didn't expect it to go to 8 layers. I mean, I was like, is this thing really that complicated? I think it's a combination of, just real estate, where can it route lines, especially in between chips and things, I mean, when you've got more yard, you can throw things around everywhere. But, when you've got, especially where the joystick port, those joystick chips are, they're right next to each other. And so, so we'll see how that goes. It wasn't a particularly expensive board to make, but it wasn't cheap. 8-layer board, I think. What did I say, Ingo? It's about $110 for 5 of them. Okay. So I kind of do want to simplify it down to 6 because you can get a little better deal with the GLC PCB if you do go to 6. So I kind of ultimately want to, try and end up with a 6-layer board. But just to kind of get this thing moving, time is kind of more of an essence here. So it's like, what the hell?
So,
depending upon whether or not it might complicate your top layer running traces, you could you could put pads for all those discrete resistors and diodes and stuff to accommodate a surface mount part. And optionally, if there was ever demand, you could like have the JLPCB put the surface mount parts on.
For the
Yeah.
discrete. Yeah.
Yeah, they could assemble it, kind of, which is
Was
very,
that-
very cheap for
So
an
yeah, for
additional
surface
cost.
mount, the parts are practically nothing.
Right.
The whole thing
Right.
would be making a big run of boards. That's all.
Yeah. Big run. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Carl, are you using JLC's router?
I am
Your
using
online router?
like the standard one, but if you go to the pro version, it does do much better.
Okay.
It takes longer, but the pro version is different. I mean,
Yep. Well, and the reason I ask is because there's some instructions on the JLC website about exporting their files, and there are apparently multiple places that you can go that do routing, multiple
Right.
websites and tools, and so they give you instructions for, I don't know, like 3 or 4 different ways of running it through someone else's router, which might
Right.
be worth exploring.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. They talk about third-party routers,
Yeah.
and because I'm sure that the router that's in the free version, well, even the pro is free, or I don't, at least it is right now. I don't know what's going on there, but so I did download it and run it, but it's a different. It's similar to the free one, the standard, but it's not. It's not like the same thing.
Yep.
So yeah, it's like, why did you guys do this? But I do know I did run it through that router, and it takes it a long time.
Yes, it does. Yeah.
But it pretty much will route it for you. It's a smarter, more in-depth router than what's in the standard version. So I'm sure I can. Yeah, that's why I'm kind of sure I can get it to a 6-layer. It's just I have to work on that, But for now, to get this board made and let's build it and see what kind of problems we run into with it. Then we can fix those, and then, like I said, make it into a 6-layer board.
I have one more question for you. So I see that you've got a 6.5 megahertz device marked as X1, but it's got 3 legs. Is that a one of those ceramic oscillators?
Well, that's the same oscillator that the 1000
Okay.
and the ZX81 use. So it's
And
I just bought 100 of those from AliEx
okay. You answered my next question.
Yeah, because you can't get those anymore. Because like I said, when I did my ZX80 mod, or the new ZX80 here, I bought new ceramic oscillators, which are still 3-pin.
Yeah.
But it didn't work. The frequency was way different. So I don't know.
Was the capacitance off?
Yeah, it might be
different.
Right. It might be something with the capacitance, or something going on there where it knocks the frequency down a couple of megahertz. And that's why I wasn't getting any video, because it was running at, like, instead of 6.5, it was running, I think, around 3.7 or 3.8 or something like that, really low.
Okay.
And so I unsoldered one of the ceramic oscillators out of the 1000 board here, the old board, just threw it in there and it worked fine.
Boom.
6.5 megahertz, fine. So something's going on there with the new parts. So yeah, so we'll have to, I'm kind of talking to Ingo about that. It's like, well, maybe we just put a crystal in there, a 6.5 megahertz crystal. And just get rid of the ceramic oscillator, because I'm sure at that time they were just penny pinching, right? So that was a cheaper way to do it. But
absolutely.
Right. And nowadays, I mean, crystal oscillators are dirt cheap now, right? So I mean, we could just kind of get rid of all of that and put a crystal oscillator. But there's also, there is an ear and a mic header, kind of down in the bottom left. You can see them there.
Okay.
So there are headers for everything, and I put a power LED header. So, we kind of want a power LED now. There's a power switch header on the very top up there in between the two DB9s. So you can actually get a power switch now, and so you don't have to unplug it and plug it in.
Well, but where does power come in?
It comes in on that DB9, on the left DB9.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
All that stuff comes in on that one. The VGA out, the composite out, the audio out, and the DC in.
So
or
you're not
what
you're not
that
kidding
jack
about a
does.
breakout
Yep.
cable.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And then of course, yeah. So I got rid of the composite. We were gonna have a composite jack, and then if we were talking, I was talking with Ingo about it. It's like that's kind of just redundant. If it's gonna come out of the DB9, I can use that space on the board for something else.
Hmm.
And then of course the joystick. And so yeah, things have been a little bit changed here, but this is the real board that's being made right now. What you're looking at.
Well, it seems to me that since your DB9s are on top of the board, if you really wanted to jam this in a 1000 case, maybe you could 3D print just the upper shell with the appropriate changes.
Yeah, I think that's something that Ingo was thinking about with his brother.
Okay.
I think he has a model of the 1000 case, right?
Somebody else made a very good 3D model of the original case that you can just download for free online. So I'm sure it wouldn't be hard to take it into like FreeCAD or something and knock out those holes or just cut them out and file them or whatever. But you
Yeah.
could definitely do it without, damaging an original case. And the Kilo Z, once we get these boards and get some populated, we'll get one to my brother, and then he can get out his micrometer and his vernier calipers, and he can take measurements and then make adjustments to his 3D model for the Kilo Z case. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Or someone could invest in those little doodads that you use for punching holes in like electric cabinets, except there's
Yeah,
got to be a DB9
well, there
size.
is. Yeah. Yeah. Those Keyway, or I think Greenlee makes
Greenly,
those.
yes.
Yeah. And they're metal punches, they're made for, punching into aluminum, but I mean,
Yeah.
plastic will be like easy for that.
Yeah. I mean, you just like drill a hole, right? And then that is how the magic works.
Right.
You clamp it and run the screwdriver or something.
Yeah. So I kind of thought maybe I'll make another version of this board, but probably not that would actually have the jacks.
Yeah.
But I'm like, then all we have is composite out. You're still going to have some kind of VGA connection.
Yeah, you still
And
need some
right.
some
And the
connector going on.
joystick port is totally, you'd need to have that too. So it's like, I don't think I'm going to. The only thing I could think about there is it would be easier just to cut out that part of the original case, right?
Well,
Because there's already holes there, but you just have to cut out those supports in between, and then that would kind of minimize how much you'd have to modify the case. But you'd still be modifying the case, and I know a lot of people don't want to do that.
I could think, one way to do that is take out the well, I'm saying you of course you're taking it out. You could run like Stuart was saying, put a header in on the top left corner, for instance, and get one of those cables that Stuart was saying with a an IDC connector on one end and a 9-pin on the other end, and run it, just sort of fold it a little bit and run it out the composite hole.
Right.
You could do that for the VJ if you wanted to be shoehorn this into an original
Right.
original case. But then of course you're dealing with the original keyboard, which you could replace with the little clicky one that Stewart has. But very cool. Wow, that's really impressive.
And ultimately, I mean, down the road a ways, we were talking about actually kind of putting this into a 2068 kind of case.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
So you'd have a 1000 inside a 2068 case, but that case is also going to be something that Ingo's brother would be, 3D printing. It would be designed from the. I mean, I kind of mentioned it to Ingo that maybe we could design it to accommodate a factory keyboard, because, as we all know, there's no that I know of 3D prints of a 2068 case that we can actually make.
But there
right?
will be soon because my brother's
Oh,
already modeling it. Yeah.
okay. So that's kind of the one thing with the community is, all these original cases are, like the standoffs are cracking and, things are going bad on these cases and we don't have a replacement or, way to make a replacement. Well, soon apparently we will. And the other thing is, let's make a 1000 because we got a lot more PC board real estate in the 2068 case. So we could add even more stuff to the 1000 and
Would
make it
you
basically kind of like modular, right? I'm not making one PC board that size. I'm thinking, it depends on kind of what you want to do with it. You would have expansion boards that go inside, right? It would plug into each other and fill up that space.
would you put the 1510 cartridge slot where
That would
the
be That
2068?
would be pretty cool, wouldn't it?
It would be.
You'd have TS 1000 cartridges that go into the cartridge slot. Yeah, that would be pretty cool.
That would be hilarious. That would break some minds.
Yeah. And so, again, that's kind of twofold there is we would have a case that the community could print to replace, the original ones that are broken or getting to the point where, you can't screw anything anymore because all the standoffs are cracked to hell and broken.
Yeah.
And then we were also, thinking, well, we might put an expansion thing in the back where it would be just a, like a 2068 one would have the holes for the 2068 ports, right?
Yeah.
You would slide it into this groove or this cutout, and it would have the cutouts for those expansion ports. And then if we did the 1000 board in there or the Kilo Z board, whatever you want to call it, it would have the cutout, you'd have a 3D printed piece that would slide in there and it would have the IO ports just for that, right? And so it makes it really flexible just to 3D print the IO port area instead of having to print a whole top case, right? Yeah, you would have to print the whole top case, but it would have a cutout that would be specifically meant for you to put in this, an IO port shield or an IO, kind of, the kind of just, using our brain here and trying to make this thing flexible enough where it could, be useful for a lot of different things.
Wow. Totally crazy. You guys are nuts.
Yeah, that's what I was at telling, Ingo's like, this thing's 40 years plus, and here we are making new shit for this thing. It's like
we gotta have something that all these new games that are still being made for it can run on, right?
Yeah.
And with joysticks and with sound, and you load them over Wi-Fi, and yeah, it's not that crazy, right?
Right. Because another thing I was thinking about putting on the original board with audio as well, putting an AY chip on there, but there's just, as you can see, really not any room for that.
Yeah.
But you know what though, Carl? I mean, this board, and I gotta tell everybody, right? Because Carl didn't really pat himself on the back when he showed this, because we talked about it one day, and not even a week later, he already had the schematic transferred to Easy EDA and was already starting to put a PCB together. And then, like less than a week later, he had the PCB and was basically ready to place the order. And so, I mean, not only does he do yoga while he does his presentations, because I don't know anybody else that can do that, but I mean, he really studied out on this thing and just like knocked it out of the park. But what I was going to say is that, the design constraint for what you guys are looking at right now is this will fit basically into an original case. The Kilo Z still has quite a bit of room that if we wanted to, and if demand was big enough, if there was enough interest to want the keyboard with the Kilo Z case, then, we could add several square inches of real estate onto another board design and really, look at what's on everybody's wish list and come up with something. Right, Carl?
That's true. That's right. And as we had discussed too, there is still room in the original TS1000 case, right?
That's true too.
Especially
fine.
under
Where the
under
keyboard is. Yep.
Right. We could extend
if
the
you don't
board
have the
down.
heat sink anymore, right? If you're not
Right.
using a 7805, you got that much room too that you could exploit.
Exactly. Right.
Mhm.
So that's kind of where I'm thinking maybe we'll go next with like putting audio on this, is just extending the board down and, throwing that circuitry on there. That way we'll have an AY, an actual sound chip in the 1000 as well. Color, I don't know. I don't know how to do that. Besides, I don't think there's a lot of, other than Paul Farrow, right, with the Chroma 81.
Right.
And he's colorized some of the games, some of the software that's out there. And I know talked about, me and you, Ingo, had talked about talking to Paul and seeing maybe if we could get his FPGA chip and actually put it on the bottom of the board, maybe, and having all that integrated, like a Chroma 81 integrated into, the TS 1000 original board, because there's plenty of room on the bottom of this board, right? I mean, it's totally open, other than all the vias and stuff like that, right? Which we'd have to work around, but still, put a Chroma 81 on this thing, that would bring it into the, like I said, color, sound, everything is integrated in his Chroma 81. But anyway, just, it still blows my mind that, why are we doing this to a 40-year-old machine?
Well, there's I forget who does the minstrels, but there's that guy in the UK who's designed several iterations of a recreation of the 81, those minstrel
right.
boards. There's the guy who's done the what is it called? The
ZX38, I think.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, I think he's up to 41 now.
Yeah, the 41 is the 1000 version. The 38 is like a ZX81.
Yeah. And then that ZX80 that you built, Carl, from that one guy.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where we're going, maybe with a further revision of this board, is going to all discrete. So getting rid of the ULA, because that's a pain point, is where you're going to get one.
Right.
So you'd have to.
And there is sorry,
ahead.
Carl, didn't mean to cut you off. No,
go ahead.
There is that ZX81 NU board that's been around for a while that you can order.
Oh, yeah.
And that one also, it's basically like a ZX80 because it doesn't have the ULA, it has all the TTL components. So a lot of that board is populated just like the ZX80 was, but it's configured as a ZX81. But obviously then we don't have the room for the WESP and the joystick circuitry and all that stuff, right? So I'm sure, you know what, I've seen sites and posts where people have reverse engineered the ULA with success. So even the VLA CPLD version that you can buy, right? What's his name? John? Carl?
Charlie. I think it's Charlie.
Charlie Engling. Yeah.
So that's an option. But I'm sure it wouldn't take long for another option to pop up while we're still playing with this. Because it's been 40 years.
Right.
What's a few more years?
Because like Ingo's saying, we were thinking of talking to Charlie and say, hey Charlie, can you give us just your chips? We don't need the carrier board, the 40-pin thing. We'll just build all that directly onto the board. Because I don't think that's ever going to go bad. I mean, it might, but certainly not. Certainly not like a ULA would, because that was kind of early days for that kind of technology, and it ran hot, and silicon migration and all that kind of thing. So that was another option, is that we may look into. I don't think you've talked to him. I haven't talked to him, but
I figured we might approach him later.
Right.
I mean, for the time being, I think we can get our hands on some ULAs that we have from other units. We can also just buy a couple of his with the carrier board and just pop them in there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think in long term that would be great if we can work out a deal with him where he gives us the program CPLDs and we just make a spot for him on the board. Or well, I say we. Carl puts a spot for it on the board.
Glad you're willing to volunteer, Carl, as well. So it's not just me.
Well, this kind of does help with that external project, which is obviously kind of now a little bit on the back burner with this thing. But this is an application of the joystick part of it, so I'm kind of curious to see how this works. Does this actually work?
Yeah.
Because if it does, then it's like, okay, well, that's a proof of concept. It's done, and so the external one should work too, right? It won't be like testing it on the external unit. There's other stuff on the external unit that obviously isn't going to be here. But think into the future with, like I said, putting this into a 2068 sized case, or even into the KiloZ case where there is much more room. We can add an RS-232 port. We can add I can't even remember now all the crap I was going to put on an external thing, but we can add all that external stuff internally, right? So it'll all be internal, so basically you won't have to plug anything into the outside. The only thing I think the expansion port would be really useful for is maybe hooking a printer up. Other than that, you'll throw your RAM packs away, you might have some obscure hardware that plugged into it, maybe IO boards or EEPROM programmers, those kind of obscure, handmade expansions, or even some of the Oliger, and the stuff that they made for the 81, would still be able to plug into it. That's why we had talked about, let's not even put an expansion slot on it, right? Because what the hell are you going to plug into this thing that it doesn't already have? And it's like, well, there are some, I do see there is stuff out there that it's just so obscure that, I don't think we would necessarily want to put it on. I mean, I could see a parallel printer port. It would be kind of cool to have built in, right? You could hook up to a,
Oh, sure. Yeah.
but,
And we also talked about, just being able to tinker, right? If you wanted to put in, an adapter board or an extender board and then use it for, prototyping another circuit. It's really nice having that out there.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's like kind of hard to think of things that you are going to plug into it when you've got everything on the board already.
Or maybe some kind of USB printer output, right? So you can use a modern printer. So you do L print something and it goes out to your, your laser printer that's hooked up to your Wi-Fi. Stuff like that. So we're kind of thinking, bringing this more into the modern age, but at its heart, it's still the original, TS-1000.
Mm-hmm.
That's the real beauty of it, right? It's not emulation of any sort. It's an actual it's still a ZD processor. It's still got, you're basically going to start off with just your basic ROM in it, right? It's still the same machine, basically, just really heavily modded.
Yeah, Christian, you have an idea? What's
Well, it's a goofy thought, but excuse me. But what are the chances of being able to uh hang on just a minute. I got noise going on.
Oh, we don't
There
hear
we
it.
go.
Your microphone
Oh,
is
okay.
yeah.
All right. Well, what I was thinking about was fixing up like an external one of those external CD players or CD readers. Yeah, yeah. It would be well. Let me get my words straight. I was thinking about the those external floppy disk drives that you normally would have seen on other computers, and I was well. There's you have the Timex computers, and they all more often than not use cassette recorders
Yep.
and cassette tapes for programs. So I was wondering whether or not it would work. Uh, put using external CD uh, drives. I have actually thought about running an experiment of recording one of these programs that I have for the two for the 2086. Yeah, recording one of those onto my computer and then burn that onto a CD and see if it'll read that. Well, it was just that was an idea that I had, but we's talking about trying different things. I wonder if that's one of those things that's worth trying.
Well, it might be, Christian, but don't forget, this thing has the USB built in, so really you wouldn't be needing to, plug any kind of audio device into this thing, right? Because you would be able to just download the P files right from, the internet, and then you would
Oh,
store it. You would store it right on the USB. So, and like I said, the USB, the RAM in there, doesn't need to be battery backed. So when you unplug this thing, it's gonna keep whatever programs are in there because it's flash memory and that's in there, right? So, that would kind of alleviate. I mean, it's just basically you're trying to say, okay, well, let's instead of saving and loading onto a tape, we'll save and load onto a CD, right? Which is certainly possible, even with an original one, right? Because you would just hook the ear and mic jacks up to a CD recorder, right? And you could do the same exact thing that you do with a tape, but you're using rewritable CDs, right? And I don't see why that wouldn't work. But again, like I said, it's just what's that application looking like when you've already got the USB on this thing where you can just download from the internet program. You don't have to, even worry about hooking stuff like that up. It's not a bad idea. I'm not saying that. It's just, you're just basically, I think, replacing the tape recorder with a CD recorder, right? And
that's
obviously,
more or less the idea.
yeah, and obviously a CD is a much better, reliable, media than tape is, right? And, so that is kind of an interesting sidebar, I guess, to this is where we instead of saving and loading our programs onto a tape, we could save and load them onto a CD. But it's just the thing there is kind of how would you get sequential access to multiple, because obviously a CD holds like about 650 700 megs, which would probably hold the whole entirety of all the
Well, but
all the software. Okay, go ahead.
well, what Christian is suggesting is burning an audio file, an audio CD, and then so you would be limited to about I think 72 minutes of audio, and there's limit to
Okay.
the number of tracks. It's like a maximum of 99 tracks or something like that, which
Okay.
you obviously
Yeah.
those two things would not intersect. Um, and
I was
I think that someone did that back in the 90s for the ZX Spectrum folks. That they did exactly what you said. They recorded, audio, essentially took the tape recording and transferred it over to CD so that you had this CD you could pop into your player and, play into your Spectrum.
They had an interface for the Commodore 64 as well.
Oh, wow.
To the tape port.
That's crazy.
It came with the CD, and you could put the CD in a CD player. And
That's a pretty cool idea, though, because then you'd have to keep track of your tracks, right? This track is, 3D Monster Maze. This track is something, this track is this. This track is that.
the C64 version actually had like a driver program that you loaded first.
Oh.
And then you would select the game off the driver program, and then it would tell you which track
to punch up
play when you wanted to load whatever game.
Well, you guys may recall some of us would use the J card and we'd write out, the counter numbers.
Mm-hmm.
And this counter number to that counter number is this specific program. Of course, it only worked for, our own individual tape machines. So, a CD player would certainly be an advancement in that respect.
Interesting. Yeah, I didn't think about. Yeah, you're right about the audio. You have to record it as audio, right?
Yeah.
I actually connected an old iPhone to through a little an amplifier circuit that I built into the TS1000. and was able to save and load programs that way onto an iPhone. And in that case, it's super easy, right? Because every time it's an audio file on the device, you can name them and then just, go back, flip it around, hit play, and load it back in. But again, you're still subject to the really long load times. And that's one thing that the Westby's loader does. It has a fast loader, right? So that's the other advantage of the Westby is not only can you fit probably the entire catalog of software ever made for the ZX81 and TS1000 into the Westby at once and never have to load and store anything again, except for maybe your own programs, but they'll load really fast.
Yeah, plus the Westby, it obviously saves too. So you can save, if you type something in, you can save it to the Westby. So, you're not limited. A lot of these things we're worried about loading. You can load stuff, but what happens when you need to save? Right, a lot of these things kind of fall down when you save, where the Westby does save, right? And we talked about maybe why isn't there a Westby for the 2068, right? And kind of looking at a technical standpoint, it's because the 2068 does its video in an entirely different way, right? That's how the Westby works. Is it's kind of scanning the video output of the ULA, and it knows what to expect, right, as far as the video output. And so it's basically, reading the video output of the ULA and recreating it internally.
But you know what though, if you skip the video part, right, you should still be able to use the Wi-Fi file server function of it.
Yeah, but how do you get it to display right on the computer on the 2068? That's, I guess, but the 2068 has a composite output.
Yep.
Right. And the Westby, basically, that's kind of what it's looking at. It connects directly to the video / tape, right? That's what it's the video and tape output on the ULA and the ZX81, and so that's how it can save files because it's already hooked up to the same line, basically, right? And then it's also hooked up to the ear port, so it can play back. That's how it plays back files. But like I said, the video in the 2068, if you use the composite, now you've got color information though too, right? You've got color, but I imagine, and I think Ingo was kind of looking at this, is maybe modifying the code in the ESP32 to accommodate color composite NTSC video and recompile it into its own memory, right? I don't know. I think it's fast enough to do it. Obviously, if it's fast enough to do the ZX81 video, it should be fast enough to do a 2068 video composite, right? So anyway, it's just, I think the Westby would be really interesting to have on the 2068, right? It's just, I mean, another thing too with your stuff, David, is if we get a 3D printed case and eventually we may be able to make our own boards of the 2068 inside there, we can incorporate more of the Pico stuff, internally. It won't be, you don't have to plug it in, right? It'll all be just in self-contained in the case. So that's another thing to think about there too, down the road. But anyway, I'm sometimes I feel I take up a lot of these meetings.
And it's all good stuff, man.
It is. I understand that, but and I guess I'm kind of having some solace in that some people are, they're interested in it. Some people aren't. I get that. That's just the way life is. But it's, it's just, I'm glad you guys are kind of hanging in there and listening to me spout all this crap off, because sometimes I think, man, maybe other people want to talk about stuff, and I don't.
Carl, we cut you off.
You do.
And we check if other folks want to.
Especially Adam. Adam wants to cut me off, but.
But let me take that opportunity and just check in with other folks real quick. Is there anything that anybody else here wants to chat about in our remaining 30 minutes? Any particular topics? Ryan, I saw you come off mic.
Oh, well, I was just going to throw in there. I had a lot of thoughts lately. I was posting one just to remind people. I did do recent update on a notionally final version of the font.
Oh, hold on.
And
which font is this? Is this your one that is sort of a back port? The potential source of
the smooth font.
Okay.
That I called Time Sync.
Yep.
It was a Time Sync.
I did not realize that.
I thought it was a good pun. Yeah, so I did a little was messing around with the daughter. We were looking at the Minecraft font, and I was using my font editor to kind of poke the pixels in to kind of see what that was like, and then I wound up just making this little quick and dirty adjustment of the built-in font for people to have if they wanted that. That was just a sort of a little quick thing that I also posted. But the other one was, I guess I was thinking about the post about the floating point. Somebody who was that had said about, oh, you would have to do all these operations to do the array indexing, and I kind of thought, oh yeah, but there was this thing where they would pack integer into the floating point, and I think bypass some of the math routines to deal with them, and I didn't know how much that was true. So I haven't done it yet. I was going to try to go through the debugger or just look at the ROM to see would it be a lot of math for trying to do these array indexing.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just a thought, but I haven't really gone anywhere with that.
Well, at least you found your ZX81.
Yeah, it was just so light and dark in the bag, and there you go.
Because you mentioned that on one of the posts. It's like, I still have your ZX. I said, no, I gave that back to you the last time.
But you do
I do have your Spectrum. Yes, I do have the NTSCI's. Okay, go ahead.
You do have the other two 1000s, right?
I do. In fact, that's what this one is. This is but see, this is the ULA
what's going on?
This is the ULA that was weak. You try to composite mod this, and it wouldn't. There's no video would come out of it because the ULA was putting out a really weak.
Suddenly, it's like that scene in Star Wars where C-3PO's in a pile of parts.
And then the other one, I still have I kind of hate to take these apart because you got to take the feet off, right? And that's kind of if it was just exposed screws, it would be no big deal. But anytime you take one of these 1000s or ZX81s apart, you got to peel the feet off, and they usually won't stick back on. So you got to get double-sided tape, and you got to clean the old stuff off and then put the new, or you could buy new feet. Companies sell the feet new too, but I just don't want to, hell, maybe even Stewart's got a bag of feet somewhere, but amongst this stuff, probably not.
I do have a bag of feet, so why don't I just send? I can send you 20 feet or 40 feet or something. I just started selling feet on eBay. Okay, for the first time, since the 80s, I found this bag, but I did have the original tape. The original adhesive is not good, so I did have to refurbish them with new double sticky tape.
Oh my God.
But they just came in I had a whole roll of I don't know,
a
few hundred, I don't know. But I need to make sure get me your U.S. Post Office mailing address. I don't have it handy. And I will send you a bunch of feet and a few ULAs, which I'm sure you could use.
Oh yeah, definitely. Especially with these new boards coming in. We can get everything else new, but like I said, can't get new ULAs, man. So we either have to cannibalize.
When I heard bag of feet, I'm thinking, is this still the user group or forensics files?
I found a bag of feet.
Well, I have bought feet from the guys in Europe, in the UK, because they make them over there. You can buy them over there.
It's a delicacy, I think.
Kind of, yeah. But I mean, it's just one of those things that they,
Yeah, there are people 3D printing them, but this is just, they just took a rubber mat and sliced it.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
How long did you say it was?
What's that, Christian?
I was going to ask him how long did he say it was.
The row or strip he has?
Well, he said he has 20 or 30 feet, and I was going to make a joke about how long did he say that was.
Stuart, how long do you think that thing of feet you have is?
How many feet of feet do you have?
I don't know.
How many feet?
I don't know, maybe 20 feet.
How many feet of feet?
Well,
I'm not redundant.
They're less than a centimeter long, so a meter would have 30, and I don't know. I have meters.
Because I know, Sinclair used those feet on a lot of things, right? Not just the 1000. They used them on the Spectrum. They used them on, all the little expansion things. The Interface 1 has some of those feet on the bottom. So, I mean, they use the same feet on a bunch of different Sinclair products, right? So it's just not for the 1000 or the ZX81. They used them on practically everything that needed a foot, right, for something. So, I mean, that's why I think they did reproduce that, is because it needs to be, that's a very useful part. And it's kind of like a keyboard, right? Like the Spectrum keyboards that they reproduce the Spectrum cases.
Yeah.
It's just because they sold so damn many of those in the UK that, there's still, a ton of them left over, and it just Stewart happened to, get into the game, when he did back in the 80s. And so, yeah, he kind of was the USA version of almost Timex, back then.
I think he definitely is now. I mean, he's probably got enough stuff to build like 50 TS1000s with everything he's got, or ZX81s.
No,
Yeah.
no. I have 20 ULAs in tubes. I have 2 tubes of 10. And then I have some miscellaneous boards. That's it. I don't have a huge amount.
Didn't you have a bunch of units that were in maybe working condition, maybe not? That
Well,
you were gonna use
they are
for those
working,
emulator units,
but they're fully working. I already modded a dozen with 32K RAM and switchable
new
power
keyboards.
supplies. I just haven't marketed them, but they're up in my country cottage. Maybe this summer I'll sell them or something. Yeah,
Nice.
and they were
Nice.
very time consuming to actually work on, I thought. So, I mean, even the board you have, I found it very surprisingly time consuming to kit parts for this little simple printer interface, this Arduino shield that can hook up to a Timex or Alphacom printer. But when you want to kit something for people to build and put in bags the right number of headers and screws and standoffs and stuff, like, very time consuming. I mean, so that's why when I look at the board you're designing with through-hole parts that you want people to solder, and I understand they may want to build something and solder something as a kit, but it's to sell that, the parts are free practically. I mean, the parts are under a penny. All those resistors and diodes and stuff, they're going to be a penny. The surface mounts are less than a penny, but the main thing is if you surface mount that board, then you don't have to package all the parts you're giving to people. You just have it all put on there and soldered. So I'm just saying, it's cheaper for you to give them the parts soldered in place by in China than it is to kit the parts. Very time consuming, I found.
Yeah.
It really is. Yeah.
And kind of with my cartridge thing, I did have some people that wanted it as not unbuilt, right? Not a lot, a smaller percentage of the people, but most of them wanted just a turnkey thing, right? You buy it, it's built, and you just plug it in and use it. And that's kind of what I think with this thing. It's going to kind of be the same way. People will want to buy it.
Yeah, when you find that you're not sure you want people to order your product because it's too consuming at the
Right.
price you want to sell it, it's too time consuming to put the kit in, so.
Yeah. See, like David said, he would prefer a kit, right? So it's kind of in that case, it might be one of those things where like, okay, well, we'll sell you the board,
Yeah.
but you supply that you're going to have to get all the parts, right?
Yeah. Just provide them with a BOM. Just give them a BOM, and then they can go to, DigiKey or Mouser or whoever and order their parts themselves.
Yeah.
Or even the board with the ESP,
pre-soldered.
on.
Right, yeah, that and then Carl mentioned that there's a 3.3 volt regulator on the bottom that's surface mount. So things like that, right? We could have already on there, and just for the tinkerers and people that want to build their own, just leave all the through hole components out.
Yeah, the most economical way actually would be if you could find a service, if PCBWay could find you a service to kit the parts in little bags. So use, Chinese labor over there to put the parts together. That instead of your labor. Because when it's your labor, you're going to say, I don't want to sell these.
Yeah, it gets expensive.
That's a really good point.
Right.
That's a really good point, Stuart. Thank you.
It does get expensive. And I think even, JLC PCB can assemble these even with through-hole parts. It's just...
Right. I'm just saying if you want to give the person the option of feeling they're soldering it, the parts cost nothing, but your labor to put the kits together, make sure you didn't make a mistake. You don't want to have to send a part after the fact. It's very time consuming. If you could get us, if you could get it kitted by the supplier in China, now you're talking. But you doing it, really, believe me, it's not what you want to spend your time doing. I got a simple example right here, and very time consuming.
And that actually you bring up a good point, Stuart, because I'm thinking now of the ROM. So I designed this board for the factory ROM, right? And the factory ROM is not really an EEPROM, right? It's
one-time program.
Right, it's a masked ROM, and the pinout I think is a little different.
Yep.
So I need to consider that in my next board revision, so that we can put EEPROM chips or flash chips or something like that in, so that we can program our own ROMs, right? So we don't have to, because obviously this board is designed to use so that's another thing basically we're going to cannibalize is the ROMs.
Yeah.
Right, because it's a copy of the original design, right? The way it is now for the ROM.
Well, Carl, I might be able to help you out there. I think I have a drawer full of ZX81 ROMs, but I'll need to check the serial numbers to see what they are.
Well, if you just need a few of those, I can give you some of those.
Okay, well, Stuart, I really
for now. Right. I don't have 100, but I have a tube or two. If you want for playing with, that'll help you in your process. Well, you should just call me, but I should send you 4 ULAs, 8 ROMs, 50 feet at some point. But
we'll definitely need to talk to you, Stuart, because I know Ingo said he had called you and talked to you, and I was like, I haven't talked to Stuart in a while, and I guess he was mentioning you were kind of, taking a break from all this stuff.
No, you should call me and we make a care kit for the project.
Okay, that'll work. Because I just was kind of making the point that I didn't even think about the ROM. So now I gotta keep that in mind next time for when we do redesign this board or modify it for something that we need to be able to, it needs to be able to take flash chips. Why put the original ROM in there? Really, at this point when we can just get flash chips that'll what we can actually get. And we just program ourselves, right? So, but it does take a little bit. It's a little different pinout, and so yeah, I didn't even think about that, Ingo, when we.
Do they really have to be ROMs, or when you're? Well, let's see. when this thing boots, I guess they do.
Yeah.
I
I mean,
I
you need
could
to
just-
use
I was
any of
just
these
thinking
newer
if there's
EEPROMs.
spare
Yeah.
processing capacity on the Westby chip,
To load.
whether you could have an image of the ROM in the Westby chip and just dump it out to a RAM chip on boot. And you don't,
Yeah.
you're only programming that the Westby, what is that, ESP32, whatever that is.
Mhm,
Yep.
mhm.
Yeah. So you put
That's
the
exactly
program
what
in
it
there
is.
and you don't actually program a ROM, but if you need for pinout purposes for something to look at the ROM, it boots up and it loads a RAM with the ROM image on boot. I don't know.
Yeah, that would be interesting. But like I said, even if we did use the flash chip and we had to program it ourselves, it's just we program it one time.
Yeah.
And actually you could actually erase it and program it with a modified ROM if you wanted to too, right? If you always
Mhm.
wanted it to
Yeah.
be that way. So I mean, I like the idea of, just kind of programming it on the fly. We could have some SRAM there or something like that, right? Or maybe even, yeah, I mean, but thinking about it, I don't know in the long run if that would really be, entirely useful per se. But I like the idea that, yeah, it's, the Westby holds, your system ROM. And so you could change that and it would flash it on the fly.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, we'll think, put that in the, as a
Wish list.
yeah. And then, but the main thing is, yeah, we need to get a flash chip there instead of, or maybe even something in the RAM. Like I said, this got a 512K by 8 RAM chip in there. And once it's battery backed, all the stuff is going to stay in there, at least until the battery dies. And then, so we could put the ROM image in there. I mean, it's already hooked up to the app. Well, it's the thing is with the ROM on the ZX81, damn this freaking machine. It's behind what somebody used to call the resistor fence, right? There's
Yeah.
resistors on the data and address lines that sort of isolate the ROM so that it can access it for the video,
The character codes, right?
Right,
For
the
the
character
character,
set.
yeah, the
Right.
character mapping, yeah.
And so I'm thinking, well, why don't we just throw it in the RAM? But that may not work because, the RAM isn't entirely behind the resistor fence. Part of it is, I think the address lines are behind the resistor fence, but the data lines are not.
Well,
Or
you
maybe
know
it's the other
what?
way around.
If you're gonna be coming up with a new, uh, flash chip or an EEPROM that you're going to stick on the board and have the pinout for it accordingly, well, then we're not restricted by the original ROM anymore, and we could actually have 2 or 3 different ROM images on there that could be switchable, right?
Yep.
And be reprogrammable by the user, so that if they wanted to have the base image on the lower, 8K, and then something else above that, and something else even above that to experiment with, and just be able to switch between them with a little jumper or something on the board, right? Or maybe even through a machine language program or something.
Yeah, we could put a 64K chip there instead of the 8K ROM, and then you could have 8 images of ROMs that you could pick from.
That's right. Bob's your uncle.
But there are enough images where, that's a worthwhile idea. There are enough ROMs, right?
Yeah.
Well,
I could make it flexible where it could use 16K, right? So you could have like a Sponzi ROM in there, or you could have 8K of ROM, and then whatever, a lot of people put high res stuff, or they put custom programs in that upper 8K space. So you could do that as well, right? The thing is you kind of going back to Stuart's idea where it's reprogrammable from inside the machine. If we do this in a flash chip, you kind of have to do it outside. You have to program it outside and plug it into the board, right? The 1000 can't flash a flash chip, unless we put that circuitry in it, which I don't think is much circuitry. It's more the programming software that you need to put in there somewhere.
Yeah. And Carl, aren't there flashes? Well, obviously there's flashes that you can program serially, but is there a flash that has a parallel memory interface that can also be programmed serially? That's
Probably there is, but I mean, the thing you run into is, where are you going to keep this software at? I
Oh,
mean, maybe it could be in the RAM.
yeah.
You
I mean,
could
it'd be
have
easy
this.
enough to pop it out, just stick it in a TL866, right? And just program it or whatever, right?
It would be,
So
but I mean, I'm just thinking once this thing's assembled, you don't want to take it all apart just to pull the chip
Uh,
out to reprogram it,
yeah,
right? You kind of want to
that's
do
where
it
the
in situ.
bigger one would be better, huh? You could put like
Yeah.
a few in there. And David Green just mentioned in the chat, like you could have a ROM in there for fourth,
yep,
have the thing boot into fourth instead of basic.
yeah.
Right.
So that's I just watched a YouTube video on that, and I thought that was really cool to
For
be
the
able to
tree
boot
fourth.
into a different, to boot into a different programming language instead
Well,
of the default basic, right?
well,
Yeah.
hell, we could even put, I think, the Jupiter Ace ROM, right? Because the Jupiter Ace is basically a 1000. It's
Yes.
just, has its own, OS, right? So
How cool
basically,
would
you put
that
the
be?
Jupiter. Well, I don't know about copyright law there. I don't think anybody gives a crap about it at this point, but we could actually just copy that ROM and throw it in there, and you'd have a Jupiter Ace.
Yeah. Hey guys, it's 5 minutes left. And April's Easter, so we are not meeting on Easter Sunday. We are meeting on Palm Sunday, which is the 13th, Sunday, April 13th. And I just wanted to mention this thought that I had today. A gazillion years ago when we had user groups, you were meeting with folks who lived in your community, right? You have a user group. There was a user group here in Buffalo. There was a user group, Carl. There was the user group in Albuquerque that John
Brown.
was theoretically the president of, right? I came across that in a late issue of Sync magazine. But you were meeting with people in your community, and it was not too difficult to do what Ingo said. Pop out a chip, take it to the user group meeting, and have somebody program it for you if you didn't happen to have an EPROM programmer, right? And now there's not enough of us, except in Albuquerque, to meet in person that often. So that's what, to my mind, that's what we are doing here, and that's why I keep posting it as if it's a user group meeting, because we get together, you guys talk about your projects, and what I want to do, what I try to do is create that space for you guys to do that. And so to that end, folks who are here today, think about what you want to talk about on Sunday. Like Jeff, if Jeff K, if you want to talk about whatever projects that you're working on, just alert us on the groups.io list, the email list, and say, I got a thing, and I'll make sure that we bring it up. And, that goes for anybody. I mean, I can dig through things and try to give you some ideas, prompt you, pull answers out of you, like I did to poor Tim earlier on. But really, I'm here to make it possible for y'all to talk to each other.
Well, and David, if I may, in addition to thanking you for doing that all these years, also the fact that you take these recordings from these Zoom meetings and you post them on YouTube, so that when I or anybody else misses a meeting, we can watch it at our leisure anytime we want, or go back to an old meeting and like, wait a minute, I remember Carl said something about this, or Jeff said something about this, or Tim said something about this. Go back to that video and watch it. And it's out there for everybody else to watch too. So I want to thank you for that, because that's your time that you dedicate to this. So thanks.
Well, and yeah, and that's an amazing thing, is that, like you said, you can watch it. Tim, who's in New Zealand, he says he does exactly that. as soon as it pops up, I guess, people subscribe to the channel, right? And as soon as it pops up, people get a notification. And, Tim goes and watches stuff, and, I know other folks watch it because, the view counts have these, to me, astounding numbers.
I know it's really cool. I look at them all the time. I look at the view numbers, and there's got to be more than just us watching these videos over and over again. So
Right,
it's
right.
really cool. It's very
Right.
cool.
Well, and today, you, Carl, Tim, David, Stewart, um, spoke up, and then, I called on Jeff to, see what he was thinking about for VCF, and Peyton. But, just like a regular user group meeting, there's, in person back in the 80s, you'd have a couple people who come and, talk about their thing, and then a whole bunch of people who are just there to, to listen and, hear about, what's the cool stuff that the other folks are doing, right?
What's even cooler now is that, those user groups and even the old newsletters. I mean, I know you guys have preserved a lot of them, a lot of the old newsletters and stuff, but these videos are going to be on YouTube for hopefully a very long time.
Yeah.
For people to enjoy, which we can't go back to the 80s and look at user group videos because somebody wasn't there with a video cassette recorder recording the meeting, right? And they didn't digitize it and make it available for us. But, the next generations that are still playing with what will be an 80-year-old computer will have these videos. So that's kind of cool if you think about it.
Yeah, that's really crazy to me, is that somebody 20 years on is going to be watching this and going, "Ooh, how do I get a hold of that board that Carl and Ingo did?"
And more importantly, where do I get an SD card? I don't even know what that is.
Right. Thank you, David. Anyway,
And do notice on this new board behind me, there's no SD card. Right?
I see that. Yes, well, because you got the USB, right?
Exactly. Why do you need that?
Right. So, they'll be hunting down ancient technology called the Westby. Was that an ESP32, or, which exact one do I need to get? And, what junkyard has a pile of those?
Right.
Yeah,
the HAL
9000 used holographic memory.
That's right. That's right. The thing that, came and went.
And that's kind of how Ingo, the board behind me is because Ingo watched one of your recordings, right? Because he hasn't been able to make a lot of the meetings because Ingo's moving and all that stuff. So that's where he heard me talk about, my expansion thing, and that's kind of what, he put two and two together. So.
That's exactly right, because everything you were saying was so in parallel with things that I was already thinking about for the kilos ad. I figured, why are we working in separate directions and separate veins? We should be working together and pull these ideas, and yeah, thank you, Carl. You blew me away with how quickly you just changed tracks and jumped right on board and cranked something out. I can't wait to see those boards.
Yeah, I can't either. I can't wait to see one working. That'd be great, man.
Yeah, definitely.
Because other than, well, I know Stuart's saying some of the components are cheap, but get me a price on the Z80 chip these days. Oh. They're not cheap. The RAM chips aren't too bad. Of course, like I said, the ULA is impossible to get you. And that's another thing, Stuart. You may be able to make more money just selling the parts. Like I said, the Z80 chip, the not necessarily the ROM. I don't think anybody really needs ROMs, but
I don't have that many. I mean,
okay.
I've told the story here. I had hundreds or thousands, and I threw them out.
You're breaking our heart.
Well, see, what I mean is
I loaded like a 10 cubic yard dumpster when I was trying to get from 2 storage garages down to 1 after I had sold like half my kits. Mm-hmm. And I had boxes of 30 ZX81s per box from the repair center, but all the membrane keyboards were broken. And I just hadn't been looking about repairing, and so everything went out. But everything else other than the membranes were probably okay. There were ULAs in there. There definitely were the case. Oh,
Well,
well,
what I mean is the boards that you have assembled and are working,
yeah.
you know, that you were thinking about selling as a
Oh,
complete
yeah.
unit, you might
Yeah.
actually just pull the ULAs out, especially like the guys in Europe. Just think of that market. I mean, they probably would. There's a ton of people probably that would
I
be.
see putting, prices on a ULA that are higher than you can buy a computer here
Right.
on eBay. You know, you
Yep.
can buy the computer here for $50, $60 here. And that's what they were asking for the ULAs. So,
Exactly.
but
So I
anyway,
mean,
I support this project you've got there. And I put my phone number in the chat. I don't know if you saw it.
okay, yeah, I got it.
Write that down, and not tonight, I'm tired,
Yeah.
but tomorrow, or actually a day after tomorrow. Tomorrow is kind of a hectic day, but right after tomorrow. Well, you can call me tomorrow. Yeah.
Well, I'll give you a call
Anytime.
Wednesday. I'll give you a
Call
call
me
Wednesday.
Wednesday. That's the good day. And
Yeah, because this is, you know, I mean, again, I know we're kind of going over a little bit, but you know, I didn't, you know, it started with this damn cartridge board, right, for the 1000, and I really didn't, you know, I kind of consider myself more of a 2068 guy, right? Yeah, I had my time with the 1000, but I was kind of interested more in doing stuff for the 2068. But then the cartridge thing came out, and that just kind of, and now I'm doing everything for the 1000 computer and not really doing anything for the 2068. And it's like, you know, granted, you know, David has the Pico, and you know,
Well,
that stuff's kind of working for him. But you know, I'm just surprised myself that I'm doing this stuff for all, you know, the 1000 board, and it's like, you know, wow. It just,
yeah, I mean,
Well, then,
like you, Carl, I too have, sort of a renewed appreciation for the 1000. I've got my little 1000 set up that
well, when it's taken to Carl an 8-layer board to do the ZX81 did, that's pretty good. That says that ZX81 was pretty good design.
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
That's
I
absolutely right.
Yeah.
Hey, Ryan,
Before I
think
put the expansion, go ahead.
I think Ryan was going to say something.
Oh, okay.
oh, I didn't know if I missed that, if Carl had got caught up with any of the Wednesday stuff.
Oh, no. You mean the Wednesday meetings?
Yeah, I tried to see if he could come to those, because we were talking about, you know what,
Yeah.
that would.
Oh,
okay.
Well, yeah, I got to look at that, or send me an invite on that,
I will,
Ryan, or one of you guys, and then
yep. I'll make sure you get the invite, Carl.
Okay.
Yep.
Because you know, go ahead.
I think you would be very interested.
Yes. Yeah. I'll get you an invite, Carl.
Okay.
Cool.
Because the other thing on this 1000, you know, I really wanted to put the audio on this, but it just wouldn't fit. So, especially with through-hole parts, because, you know, if they poke through both sides. So I got plenty of room on the bottom. There's nothing on the bottom really, but I got all these holes that I got to deal with. And then of course you got the holes on the top, right? So you can't, you know, even if I soldered something on the bottom, the holes are going to poke from through the top. So yeah, if it was all surface mount, it would be no problem. You know, you could do all this stuff surface mount easily on this size of a board. But then again, you get into the layers, right? Because surface mount, now you got to have vias, because the surface mount is just on the top layer. So you have to have some way to get all those pins, you know, to the other layers. Yeah. And, but anyway, I'm learning a lot of stuff too. So that's kind of cool.
Yes. Same, Carl.
You know, and that's kind of what motivates me, like Ingo was saying, to get this thing done kind of quick, because I had to find somebody that already had the model of the board, because it has certain holes in certain places, right? For the standoffs in the case. So we had to make sure we got those in the right place. So, but anyway, I appreciate you, Stewart. You know, I know you have most of your stuff is the 1000. That's kind of why I was thinking, you know, way back a couple of years ago when we first started doing these meetings, I'm like, you know, I don't know that I'll be needing a lot of stuff from Stewart, because it's all, you know, the older 1000 stuff. But here we are today, and that's kind of all I'm doing. I need ULAs, I need ROMs, I need, you know,
okay.
Who the hell?
Yeah. So you can take care of at least make your prototyping, you know, in small quantities easier. You don't have to pull your ULA out of this one and that one. You could keep several. Yeah. So Yeah, be happy. And
Have a good one, Dave.
Thank you, Dave. Hey, on that note, Johnny Red has been up. It is way past his bedtime. We need to let him go.
It's not our fault that he lives in Argentina or wherever.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks, Johnny, for hanging out, man. Appreciate it.